All right, so this is the corrections for the test for the Unit 14 test, and it's worth half credits for the test that you took last time. So, for example, the class average on that test was around 50%. So let's say you got that average. That means that you still have 50% left over to make up. Now, half of that is what we're doing today. You can get half credit for today, which would be 25% extra. Okay, so what you're going to go from, if you had the 50%, would be from 50% to 75% based on what we're doing today. Now, to get that credit, you need to do two things. You need to write down the answers to all of the questions that I'm about to tell you. So start with a clean piece of paper. I would expect it to take front and back to answer all these questions. Make sure your name's at the top and the subject is Chapter 14 test. All right, and we're about to do number 1. You need to write the question and the answer. So I'll try to show you exactly what to write, but for example, for this one, you would write the sum of two numbers, x and y, and then their differences and so on. All right. In order to get credit, you do have to write the question, you do have to show your work, and you do have to write the answer. You cannot use these notes for the test. So what we're doing right now is taking notes, and then after we take notes, we'll study those notes. And when you think that you're done studying the notes, then you're going to retake the test. And really, that's up to you when you think you're ready to retake. Okay, so, the last thing. I'm not answering every question on the test. So you need to understand what you're writing because I'm answering what I believe is enough questions for you to understand all the questions on the test. In other words, I'm answering about 5. And there's about 10 questions on the test. Okay, so number 1. Number 1 says the sum of two numbers x and y is 142. Now sum means add. So I'm going to add x and y. So the sum of two numbers is 142. And then it says their difference, and difference means subtract. Okay, so this is the sum and this is the difference. Now their difference is 14. And then you have to pay very close attention to the question. It says, which system could be used to find the numbers? It doesn't say what is the solution, what is x and what is y. It never does ask you for those two numbers. It just says what's the equations. And the equation is the sum here of the two equations is 142. Okay, so the sum is 142 and the difference is 14. So that's where we're getting question number 2. All right, so the answer to number 1, please write the sum of two numbers, x and y is 142, their difference is 14. That's the question, and then the solution, x plus y is 142, x minus y is 14. So let me get rid of those colors so you can see a little better. For this one, would you please just sketch this graph? You don't have to draw it exactly, so I've got a couple of lines. One of them has a positive intercept here and a negative slope. And the other one has a negative intercept down here and a positive slope. All right, so drawing just exactly what I just sketched is good enough. And then it says, what's the solution to the system? And it is right here. And what I do is, that's going to be at x equals 2, which is 1, 2, and then y is also 2, which is 1, 2. So these aren't labeled, but you can still count 1, 2 over, and 1, 2 up. So this is the point 2 for x and 2 for y. And the solution is right here. This graph shows two objects that are moving at a given distance up and down over a given amount of time. Okay, and what we need to know is that this is slow. The blue line is slow because it's not steep, and then the red line is fast. Now, the red line starts here and goes up to here, so it travels this much distance, whereas the blue line starts here and goes to here, so it travels that much distance. So the red guy starts at 0. He has to travel all this way. So I'm going to circle the word not here because I'm looking for which one of these is false, and only one of them is false. So let's go through. The blue object and the red object will be at a certain distance at the same time. That means they will intersect. And that is true. They intersect right here. In other words, the red line catches up. Then the red object travels a greater distance. Yes, that is true because it starts at 0 and goes all the way up here to catch up. So he has to travel a greater distance. This is true. The red object is traveling. One of these has to be false because these are opposites. So one of them has to be faster. Either the red object is faster or the blue object is faster. So let's see. The red object is faster. That's true. So that means it must be false that the blue object is faster. Okay, so I would answer this one. The one that is not true is the blue is faster than the red. All right, next question. It says, this is the goat and chicken problem. It says, a farmer raises goats and chickens on his farm. He has 47 animals, so this must be G for goat and C for chicken. Goats and chicken is 47, so the first condition was here, exclamation points. The 47 animals, goats and chickens makes 47. And altogether, his animals have 118 legs. So the other condition is that the animals have 118 legs. And then it looks like I've got two variables, G for goats and C for cows. And it actually doesn't let us draw a question mark when we're annotating because it wants us to come up with a question mark. Now, as soon as you see this, I bet a lot of you people gave up because you thought you were supposed to solve it, but you weren't. It gave you the solution, and it asked, what does that mean? Okay, so all you have to do is figure out what this means. And what it means is that G, comma, C equals 12, comma, 35. Okay, so that means that the goats is 12, and cows, chickens are 35. All right, so let's go through. There are 24, no way. None of them are 24. There are 12 goats, that looks good, and 23 chickens. No, there weren't 23 chickens. There are 12 chickens and 35 goats. No, there were 35 chickens. There are 12 goats, yes, and 35 chickens, yeah. That's what we wanted, 12 goats and 35 chickens. All right, so we have at last, so far, all the questions that I've given you are basically like this one. From my perspective as a math teacher, there's a lot of distraction here, but it really just comes down to, like, it's the same as asking who's buried in George Washington's tomb. So they told you G and C were 12 and 35. So it's telling you the answer. You just have to read it, so far. Now, this next question is an actual math question. So I'm going to have to solve that. And I'm going to make a little bit more room for myself because when I'm answering questions like this, I like to have tons and tons of room. So it's 3x minus 2y equals 5. Whoops, I tried to make it negative 5. Is the first equation. And then the second equation was y is 4x minus 1. Okay, and good to have tons and tons of room for a problem like that. Now, these take place in a couple of steps. First, I'm gonna plug this in to here, okay? And then when I've solved it for x, I'm gonna then reevaluate it for there. So this is the substitution step. Substitution. And I'm going to rewrite this equation with lots of room for the y because I'm about to replace it. 3x minus 2y equals 5. Now, you'll notice I haven't done anything to that. I've just left myself lots of room because I'm about to substitute y for all of this stuff. Okay, so I'm about to put this stuff in for y because y is equal to this. All right, so I can replace the y with what it is equal to, which is 4x minus 1. Now there's three steps to solving this. So I'm going to distribute first. I'm going to add like terms. And then I'm going to start doing the algebra, moving from one side to the other. I've got a two-step problem, and I'm either going to add or subtract first, and then the last step is always to divide. Okay, so I'm going to distribute, add like terms, add or subtract, and then divide. Right, here I go. So I'm going to put a box around this negative 2 to remind myself that there's a negative. So it's negative 2 times 4x as well as negative 2 times negative 1. So negative 2 times 4x is negative, right here, 2 times 4, 8x. And then negative 2 times negative 1, negative times a negative is a positive, plus 2 times 1 is 2. So these are the two terms. 2 times 4 is 8, and 2 times 1 is 2 that I got from distributing. And I still have this 3x out in front. And it's still equal to 5. So that was my first step, distributes. Okay, I'm going to put up my wall to make sure I keep track of my sides. All right, now I'm going to add the like terms. Okay, the two like terms for this problem are 3x as well as negative 8x. I'm going to combine those two. There's more negatives in the 8 than there are positives in the 3. So after they cancel, I'm left with 5 negative x's. And then I bring down the positive 2 equals 5. And now I'm going to start my algebra. There's 2 steps. I always add or subtract first and then divide. So I think I may need a little bit of room in here in a second. So I'm going to subtract the 2, because the opposite of plus 2 is minus 2. So I do that to both sides. Now I'm doing algebra. Inverse to both sides. I bring down the minus 5x. And then the other side is 5 minus that 2 is 3. And my equal sign is there. And then the last step here is to divide. So I'm going to divide by, this is negative 5 times x, and the opposite of times negative 5 is divide by negative 5. And it looks like I've got some horrible fraction, which is disappointing. I'm going to have to bring that question back down again. I hope it's not really a fraction. So I'm going to go back and double check all my steps here. So 4 goes in here. That looks good. 3x. Here, let me just... I went back and triple checked this, and then also my students solved this last time, and I'm pretty sure that we're right that this is negative 3 over 5. The problem is that it's not in the test bank correctly. So let me just carry through and finish this. So now I'm going to do the next step, which is I know x, and I'm going to replace it here, which is the evaluate step. And unfortunately, that's a fraction, but there's really no help for it. So y is equal to 4 times x minus 1. And instead of 4 times x, I know what x is, so I can replace it with this fraction down here, negative 3 divided by 5. Okay? And unfortunately, that's a fraction, so I'm going to have to multiply. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12 over 5. Minus, and then 1 is the same thing as 5 over 5, for a grand total of 12, and 5 makes 17 negatives. Okay, so I'm going to circle that here, and then the x value was here. And making my final solution, x equals negative 3/5 and y equals negative 17 over 5. When I grade this, I will give credit for either infinitely many solutions or no solution, because when they designed the test, they got this one wrong. This is, I guess you could call it the most difficult problem, because it's anyway the one that has all the steps to it. So first I'm going to annotate. In order to participate in this thing in April, blah, blah. Okay, this is all unimportant. Okay, they needed $1,200, so that's our first condition. They have enough food to serve a total of 240 people, that's our other condition. They're charging adults $6, so that's our first variable, and children are $2. That's our second variable. Okay, and then the question, how many adults and how many are children? Okay, so now, next step, define your variables, A for adults, and C for children. Next step, the two conditions, it's $1,200 that they need to raise, and there's a total of 240 people. So that means for the first equation, adults and children make 240 people. Okay, so that's my first condition that I just took care of there. And then the other one, it's $2 for children and $6 for adults. $2 for children plus $6 for adults, and they need to save up $1,200. Okay, so that's my next step, which is write the two equations. And now I'm ready to solve these equations. Before I substitute, I need to get one of these equations by itself, and I'm going to do that with A plus C. So I'm going to solve this for A, and let's say that whatever the kids are, it's 240, the total, minus however many of them were adults. All right, so I subtracted A from both sides, and this is now what I'm going to substitute. Okay, so I'm going to have to solve this really quickly because I only have 1 minute. So I'm going to take C for children and replace it here. So instead of $2 for children plus $6 for adults is $1,200. I'm going to replace this with how many of them are children exactly. So 240 in total minus A for however many adults. All right, and then I have the same steps as I did before. I'm going to distribute, I'm going to add like terms, and then I'm going to solve. So 2 times 240 is 480 minus 2 times A is 2A plus 6A equals $1,200. Okay, so first I distributed, now I add my like terms. 6 here, minus 2 there. 6 minus 2 makes 4. So I have 480 minus 4a